I like sitting because it feels like we're having a conversation. And one of the many things I appreciate about Judson is that here I feel like I really be myself. I don't have there's no sort of pressure to be in a robe and a collar behind a pulpit far away, preaching to the people. We are in conversation about what we need to be and how we need to be in the world and what God has promised for us, what love wants for us. So thank you for your patience and the support just now. Thank you. Good morning, Judson. I'm Reverend Bridget Anthony. My pronouns are she and her. I think it's important that we acknowledge that saying pronouns is not something that is arbitrary. It's something that trans and queer people have said makes them feel safe. So I think it's important to make sure that we continue to do that. I want to thank you, Matthew, for bringing the drama to the readings. I said, I said pump it up, and you did. Thank you so much. Judson, I'm not going to hold you for long, and if this was a black church, that would worry you, because that would mean you're in for a couple of hours, but I mean it this time. I'm hoping that many of you will stay after this service for Smart Mouth College. I'm going to start right now with a memory. When I was a little girl, my mother used to read stories to me in bed. My favorite story was Jack and the Beanstalk, which would scare me, and I don't know why, but I always wanted to hear it over and over again. We would read all sorts of things. She read all kinds of things to me. Some titles I can remember, others I can't. I just remember the refrain. Not I, said the cat, not I, said the rat. Henny penny, turkey lurkey, little things that have stayed with me. One of my absolute favorites, though, was this story about stone soup. And I know that there are different variations about it, but the one that I remember was about a poor community that was starving. And I think it was an old woman who one day said, you know what, I'm going to make stone soup. Please come by, everyone, and enjoy it with me. And she put a big old clean rock. I don't have a rock, I have one of the blocks that we'll be using for Smart Mouth College. She put this rock in this big pot of boiling water. And she stirred it, and she was like, stone soup. Ooh, doesn't it smell delicious? And everyone looked at her like she was crazy. The townspeople were like, what? That we very clearly see that there's a rock in the pot. It was not very appetizing. But one townsperson walked by and said, you know what? Well, I know I don't have much, but I have like one potato. And so let me put it in your pot. And so they threw their potato in. And then another person looked at the pot and said, well, I have hardly anything. I have an onion. And they threw their onion in the pot. And one by one, everyone in the town threw in the little bit that they had until there was a big, delicious, bubbling, fragrant pot of soup that they all were able to share and enjoy. Judson, over the next 6 weeks, we are going to be making stone soup together. Reverend Micah and I will be bringing stones. And we've got a big pot of water. And we cannot wait to see what you will be adding in. Today, I'm going to throw in another stone. It's the verses that you heard read so beautifully. We are talking about the prophetic, harrowing, hopeful words of Octavia E. Butler, and we are forging into them with radical hope. The world, and that's a beautiful portrait of her, the world that she invites us in is often described as dystopian. But I don't use that word anymore because I heard someone say that dystopian just means, what if all the terrible things that are happening and have happened to black and brown people all over the world started happening to white people. That's basically the premise of what these horror stories are. So the story that Octavia tells may be familiar to some people, this idea of being ostracized, hated, displaced. It almost seems like it's one of the possibilities for this country. And that's why it's so scary. In the book, people have allowed their prejudices to win. There are gated communities. People are isolated, siloed. Outside of these gated communities is nothing but violence and terror. The heroine of our story is Lauren Olamina, and she's forced out of this fragile safety into the unknown roads of the United States after her father disappears, after her brother disappears, after they are presumably killed, and her gated community is breached. Along the way, she meets many people, and it becomes sort of a road trip story. But we're also treated to her inner thoughts because she keeps a journal. And ultimately, Lauren uses the faith that she was given. Her father gave her faith because that's what we do. We give faith to our children. It doesn't sort of happen by osmosis. Someone gives us Christianity, or someone gives us or births us into Judaism. She begins to take this gift from her father, this gift of religion, and she creates a new philosophy for living, a path, an understanding. I don't know if she would call it religion, but she does call it earthseed. The parable that this story that Octavia wrote is rooted in the parable of the sower that Jesus tells by that seaside. It's basically very simple. Sow your seeds where they can bloom. A few verses later, Jesus revisits this parable for the disciples. He explains it to them more fully, because so much of the Jesus and disciple relationship is him just going, okay, no, this is what I meant. And so our guiding question, Judson, what does it mean to change? After writing this sermon, I think the question actually is, what does it mean to keep changing? Because we have no problem changing a little bit or adapting once or twice or every now and then. But there are some things that we expect to be finished. There are some things that we want to be done with, like social justice. Come on. We like to think of justice as a zero-sum game, a finite battle that can be won and put to rest. Finally, those rights are secure. I can focus on something else. Because it's depressing, Judson, to think about having to fight these battles over and over again. How many times have you been at a march and you've seen a woman say, I fought this in the 60s, and here we are again, back at the same point? I hate to think of my son working and fighting against ever more sophisticated and clever racists. I don't want to imagine a granddaughter still marching in the streets, holding up a sign, my grandmother was fighting this 30 years ago, and I am still begging you to let me have control of my body. We want to be done with change. Sometimes. But that is what Octavia teaches us, that only by staying in motion, by constantly changing and adapting, by constantly being changed, that is the key to freedom, to life, to love, to liberty, the pursuit of happiness. That's it right there. That's the freedom. That is the comfort. That is the community that we must build. We build it through changing. Only by constantly being open to the fact that nothing stays the same, that there is nothing new under the sun, that nothing is supposed to stay the same, that we can be okay with some of our seeds finding fertile ground, and some of them being choked by weeds. The other aspect of adaptability and change that I'm hoping that you all can jump in and discuss with us that I want to highlight is how often we forget that we've always done it. It's always been the only way to survive, that we are always doing it, even now. We are still the baby that learned to roll over, the toddler that learned to walk. We are the child who grew up and looked both ways when crossing the street, who learned not to play with fire. We're the adult who survived the heartbreak and the loss and the betrayal. I know that there were moments that I can remember where I thought that there were men who I thought would break my heart and I would just lay down and die. I survived. I had a boyfriend, I can't even remember his last name. And I did not do a year program in London because of him. I don't even know what the guy's name is anymore. Anyway, the adults that we are survivors. The person who has loved and known true friendship and community and felt alive. The person who has adapted to every new day, which includes love and loss. As we still hold on to the memory and we see that empty space where Kristen sat 2 weeks ago. So Judson, stay in this with us. Come back down to earth. Ground yourself in this knowledge. Don't succumb to amnesia. Don't forget how you made it. You made it through the last time you made it over. Don't forget how you relied on a support system that was there for you, that held you. May not have been perfect, but you are here. Don't forget your own resilience and capability to keep changing. Ground yourself in this knowledge that you can do this. You are the earth seed that Octavia talked about, that was promised, that has been scattered on fertile ground. Open your eyes and keep moving. That is what we need you to throw into the pot. That's what the world needs. Now more than ever, we need people who have come alive. Your personal ability to change your experiences, your memories, your adaptations, your struggles, your triumphs with change, that is part of the soup. That's what's going to make it delicious. So throw it into the pot. Throw it into the pot, Judson, and let's see what we can make together. Let the salt of the earth, the seeds of peace, let earth seed say amen.